Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to face the storm and see if Sturmwind is worth dusting off the Dreamcast. Before riding this storm, let me point out that there is nothing wrong with the video. It has been recorded from a FrameMeister with scanline emulation on. Read the comment below to know why I have recorded the video like this. Sturmwind is an horizontal shoot-'em-up developed by Duranic and published by Red Spot Games, and it has been in development for quite some time. Sadly, the time spent in development does not directly equate to the level of polish one would expect. Sturmwind has two main modes: normal mode, a sequence of 16 stages that can be chosen individually after completing one of them, and arcade mode, 7 stages in succession. Stages in arcade mode are almost the same as normal mode. Patterns vary slightly between the two, and the game actually feels a tad easier in arcade mode. Mechanics are the same for both modes. The player's ship, the Sturmwind, is equipped right from the start with 3 different weapons: Lichtblitz, Northwest, and Rudel. All of them can be upgraded by collecting the corresponding power-up, but only when a weapon is active. Weapons act as a health bar of sorts. If hit by enemy fire, the active weapon will be discarded, and when the third weapon is gone, 1 life is lost. Weapons can be regained by collecting the corresponding power-up, which changes weapons after a certain number of hits from the player's ship. Collecting the same power-up of the active weapon will upgrade it to a maximum of 3 levels by adding 2 drones that will loosely follow the player's ship around, acting as a shield against very few enemy projectiles. Drones are not invincible, and after a number of hits, they will be destroyed. They'll also be destroyed if they impact with the scenery and other enemies. It is possible to charge a weapon, just like R-Type, but charging a weapon too much will result in burning out said weapon. Fire direction of the main ship and drones can be changed at the press of the L or Y buttons respectively, and finally there is a smart bomb. There is a skull multiplier system in place. After killing an enemy wave, the letter's wave bonus will appear on screen, and, if destroyed, a star will be awarded. The number of stars is the score multiplier. The different weapons must be cycled through with the R button, rather to be assigned to their own button, and this makes upgrading weapons cumbersome. Power-ups will always fly from right to left and take a good amount of punishment for a full cycle, often resulting in upgrading the wrong weapon. As enemies come from all directions, the ability to change fire direction is a must, but independent controls for the main ship and drones is a bit too much and not as widely used as you might think. Changing direction of the main ship's weapon is much easier thanks to the L button's locations, and I have left the Y button almost unused in all of my playthroughs. Still on power-ups, killing the wrong enemy on the left side of the screen will make the power-up disappear in a split second, which can be quite frustrating at times. The 3 weapons have distinct personalities, though the Northwest, with its ability to sweep backward and forward, is the less reliable of the 3 and often left as a last resort or for the few bosses that actually attack from above or below. 2 other big problems are enemies appearing out of nowhere and bosses' weak points. In certain stages, enemies just appear in the center of the screen without any warning, while others fades in. The problem with fading enemies is that they are active the moment their animation starts, and not when it ends. In both cases, this leaves no room for maneuvering, and more often than not, both result in very cheap deaths that really leave yourself scratching your head on why it happened. On the second point, bosses' weak spots, things are a bit more complex. Some bosses have no real indication where their weak spots are, and though it's not hard to figure it out, the lack of visual and attack pattern feedback for your actions is misleading. Blinking of hit parts is kept to a minimum, and bosses do not change their patterns based on how much damage they receive, and battles just end in a very unsatisfactory way. Boss designs are good and very creative, though it would have been better to have less of them and even less stages, and further enhance the strongest designs, maybe leaving out one or two of the many variations of mechanical spiders found throughout the game. Visual clarity is Sturmwind's main problem. There is no denying that the game features very lush visuals and runs very smoothly. There are a lot of details in every stage, and very few objects are shared between the 16 stages, all exhibiting original settings. Explosions are large, backgrounds are animated with huge sprites, and everything is finely represented down to the last visible detail. And this is where the problem lies. It's very hard to understand what's live or not, with some backgrounds being over-detailed, often forcing the game to indicate what will harm you, rather than relying on a skillful representation of fore and background. Stages with a technological settings are particularly guilty of this, though other stages often mask incoming enemies and projectiles with special effects that, while looking great, do not really contribute to the game. Getting used on how the game looks takes a while, and some stages are more enjoyable than others just because the graphics don't make things harder than they should. On a plus note, projectiles are very visible, so no real cheap deaths due to those, but combining enemies appearing out of nowhere with hard-to-read stages leads to many cheap losses of weapons, or, worse than everything, death. The attention given to Sturmwind's graphics is undeniable. It looks as good as or better than many other shooters, but ultimately this level of detail is detrimental to the game itself. As is the music. I knew that being a game from Red Spot, Sturmwind would have featured some dance techno tunes, but here they completely overpower the sound effects, and I even found the soundtrack distracting due to its sounds, forcing me to almost mute it. In a strange turn of events, I actually prefer the remixed version found in the limited edition than the standard soundtrack of the game, though both can really be defined as background music for a video game. Probably, if you actually like the genre, it won't be as bad as it was for me, but really, the music hardly fits the stages and how the game looks, and the two don't really go well together. Sound effects are problematic as well. Taken alone, they do their job, nothing out of the ordinary except for the excellent explosions, but when put together, everything has the same volume level and they come out as a complete mess, especially when there are peculiar effects that completely mask the others. From time to time, a woman will appear in the lower left side of the screen telling something. It's impossible to understand her except for Achtung, Achtung. and she comes out to be completely useless. Not distracting because it's hard to hear when she pops up, but simply useless. Despite all these problems, Sturmwind is not as bad as it might sound. It is short-lived though. 16 stages and 3 different difficulty levels, 2 game modes, a gallery section based on achievement-like objectives and online leaderboards that must be accessed via password and a PC, do add something to the game, but it's not very likely you'll stick around for more after completing the 2 main game modes. Sturmwind is a breath of fresh air for shooters fans that have been swamped by vertical bullet hells for quite some time, but overall I'd say it's just average. It has good ideas and some of its production values really shine above many games of the genre, but there are more readily available and better horizontal shooters out there. I hope you have enjoyed this review and you'll stick around for more. Briareos Kerensky, over and out.